Hi and welcome to my Fireman top main character list. I'm going to start with explaining which characters you find in this list and the criteria that I'm judging them by. First off, the avatar from Fire Emblem Fates will not be in this list. I never include anything from games I haven't played myself. I've read pretty much every spoiler about Fates, but since I haven't played it myself and this video was made, the avatar from Fire Emblem Fates will not be included. Also, characters like, for example, Zoe, Chris, and Kizuna are not on this list either, because they are not main characters. They are more like driving secondary characters, so they will not be included either. So, who are on this list? The characters you'll find here are the following: Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon and Mr. of the Emblems Marth, Guidance Almonds Elisa, Genealogy of the Holy Wars Sigurd and Selith, Gracia 776 Leif, Binding Blaze Roy, Blazing Swords Elwood Hector and Lynn, Sacred Stones Ephraim and Erika, Path of Radiance Ike, who also appears in Radiant Dawn along with Micaiah, and lastly, Awakening's Avatar and Crom. Things that I'm going to judge them by are gameplay, personality, story, the basics. So with all that being said, let's start this list. So at the bottom of the bunch we find Radiant Dawn's Micaiah. Micaiah is one of the two main characters from Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, and is the one the story starts with. Personality-wise, she's a caring girl who will do anything for her country and the people close to her. She's also a bit of a humorous side, which is appreciated, and she's a light magic user, so she's a bit different from the usual sword guy main character. Then, why is Micaiah last on my list? To start off with, the gameplay hurts her a lot. Micaiah is very slow and has a lot of trouble doubling enemies. The magic is great, but there are plenty of other units in Radiant Dawn that have around as good magic as her, and they're much easier to train and much more worth it. She's a good healer, I'll give her that, but then again, there are other characters that are equally good but much better at fighting. It's really tedious training Micaiah, and I would rather spend that experience on someone else. But since Micaiah is required, you're forced to train her. Unfortunately, Micaiah doesn't have much going for her personality and story-wise for me either. She's seen as this flawless miracle woman by the Dane army. The thing is, she really isn't that great. Soren completely destroys her tactics on more than one occasion. She also comes off as stupid and too obedient with the whole blood pact thing. In contrast to the other main character in Radiant Dawn, she really is inferior and not nearly as likable. In the end, she's kind of left behind in Ike's shadow. That could have been seen as a wasted potential, but to me it doesn't feel like that at all. To me, Ike saved the game from an awful main character. There really is little that I like about Micaiah. Okay, so this next one might come as a shock for most people, but I don't like Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy Wars' second main character, Selith. I do understand that most people probably disagree with me here, but I'm going to try and explain why I really dislike Selith. So, Selith is the main character of the second generation of Fire Emblem 4. Why is there a second generation? Well, because the first one died halfway through the game. The thing is, I really liked the main character of the first generation, Selith's father, Sigurd. Selith arrives in the beginning of Generation 2. He's nothing like his father. Sure, he's that nice and heroic, typical main character, but really doesn't live up to his father at all. To me, Selith is boring, insecure, and he relies too much on other characters like Oyfei, Levin, and Shannon. He doesn't feel like a leader, he's too naive and kind of riding on Sigurd's wave. I understand that I might be too hard on Selith, but after Amazing Sigurd, Selith is just too much of a disappointment for me. His cousin Leif, the main character of Fire Emblem Gracia 776, who is a year younger than Selith, feels much tougher and more determined than him. So to me, Selith is that forgotten main character in the middle of two much better ones. Selith also suffers much gameplay-wise for me. I played Fire Emblem 4 several times, and Selith has always had trouble in the beginning for me. Compared to his father, who destroys everything upon arrival, Selith was a major letdown. He's just too much of a chore to train, and it takes way too long for him to be as good as other characters. In the end, he turns out really good though, so he does get better, even surpassing his father stat-wise. So to me, Selith was a big disappointment that I always have gotten unlucky with. He's a good person though, and he does avenge his father. He just doesn't live up to my expectations. Okay, so there are two Fire Emblem games that I have only played once, and Fire Emblem Gaiden being one of them doesn't really help the two main characters. I can honestly say that I don't remember Alm and Selith so much, so they aren't going to rank very high on my list. I decided to place Alm on 14th place mostly because of some reasons I will mention later on my list. So what makes Alm beat Selith and Micaiah for me? The biggest reason is that there really isn't anything I dislike about Alm. He's so bland that there really isn't much to say about him. Gameplay-wise, he's clearly one of the best in the game, but considering Fire Emblem Gaiden as a game, that's not too hard to accomplish. Almost your typical brave and righteous main character. There really isn't much to say here though, since he's from an NES game that has never gotten remade. The only real reason as to why I place Alm higher than the previous two is that he's a good unit that doesn't irk me in any kind of way, so let's just move on to the next one. I guess this one wasn't very surprising considering that I already mentioned barely remembering Fire Emblem Gaiden. Just like Alm, Celsa suffers from being from an NES-only game. She doesn't have much personality either, but there are a few things that make me like her more than Alm. First, I'll just mention that Celsa easily is one of your best units in Gaiden 2. While Alm is the better of the two gameplay-wise, Celsa beats him in other ways for me. While Alm is your typical main character, Celsa is the first female one in the series, and she's not a classic damsel in distress girl. Celsa is actually pretty clever and strategic. She's a determined girl and she's kind of idealistic, but not to a fault. The only minus I have about her personality is that she's a bit naive. But to me, Celsa had a bit more personality than Alm, and that's really the only reason I have placing her above him. She's a cool girl that actually tried to do something by herself in a time when female characters often stayed in the background, or whose only purpose was to be rescued by a dashing hero. I guess many of you have been waiting for this one. The thing is, I actually like Roy, but I don't like him enough to place him higher on this list. Roy's biggest problem that I think many of you know, unless you only know Roy from Super Smash Bros., is gameplay. Roy is definitely one of the worst main characters gameplay-wise in Fire Emblem. Some would even argue that he is the worst one. I've only played Binding Blade twice, and the first time I played it, Roy actually turned out great for me. I had no trouble keeping up the most part of the game. It was my second playthrough that I got a taste of the awfulness that Roy is known for. His stats were bad and he promoted way too late to fix it. He was more of a liability than an asset, someone that you would rather bench for the most part of the game. It didn't matter that Roy destroyed everything in the last chapters when he was the biggest reason of resets for the majority of the game. Another thing that hurts Roy as a main character is that his game is pretty much a copy of another Fire Emblem game. If one compares Roy's games to Marth's games, one can see that Binding Blade really is a worse copy of Marth's story. Roy is even a copy of Marth in Fire Emblem, and not just in Smash. Roy often gets branded as a rather bland character, but with other main characters like Alm and Celsa, he really isn't that bad in personality. Something I like about Roy is that he's one of the smarter main characters, and he's just 15 years old. Most of the others that had a good tactician by their side to help them, Roy doesn't have that. The closest one would be Merlinus, but he's awful and Roy does right in never listening to him. He makes his own tactics and decisions instead, which is impressive for a 15-year-old. The only other main character that young even had two tacticians. He's also a kind and thoughtful person who knows about his faults. He acknowledges that he's too serious, and I do think that people need to remember that Roy is only 15 years old. He's still got plenty of time to grow. On 11th place, we find Sacred Stone's female protagonist Erika. As a unit, Erika can be summarized as a swordmaster on a horse. She's a bit on the frail side, but she can dodge most things, and she always doubles. In a game that is considered one of the easier ones, she's a great unit. She does however get outshined by her brother in usefulness, as she isn't as great stat-wise and she doesn't have a distance weapon by being locked only to swords. As a character, she's a really kind and friendly girl. Erika is very supportive and good at cheering people up. She's a little of a funny side, and I also like how she stands up for herself. She doesn't want to be protected by others all the time, and actually protects them instead, as seen in her support with Inns. Her kindness does however cause her biggest negative for me. Erika is too naive to the point that it hurts the army. She literally gives away an important item that they had to protect no matter the cost, just because she can't fathom that your childhood friend isn't who he used to be. I really dislike naivety in a character, and when someone is so naive that they literally give away something important to the main antagonist, they appear pretty dumb. That's the reason why Erika has scored pretty low on this list. Sure, a little naivety doesn't hurt, but this was downright stupid. On to Fire Emblem Awakening's avatar. The disadvantage with having an avatar as a character is that they tend to suffer a bit personality-wise. To add on to that, the avatar from Fire Emblem Awakening has memory loss, a recurring story element in video games that guarantees that the character has little background story. I think that the avatar is above many main characters is the plentitude of support conversation, so there's a lot to go on here. The avatar is a bit humorous, smart and friendly. Since they're able to support anyone in the game, one can come to the conclusion that they can make friends with anyone. Much of Awakening's story is actually about that, the bonds between friends and family, something I've always found important myself. What the avatar suffers from is that they have such little background story. We know close to nothing about their life before Crom found them on the field. We know about the whole Grimleal thing, but what happened to the avatar after the mother escaped with them? How was their life? What were they doing before they passed out on the field? I would have liked to know more about that. So to me, the avatar was a character with potential, but they were already doomed even before the game began, due to being a self-made character. In gameplay, the character is great. You can do pretty much anything with the avatar as long as the gender allows it. You can even choose its flaws and assets, so you can choose what stats to specialize in. Really, the choice is yours. If you get an awful avatar, you only have yourself to blame. With Fire Emblem Awakening, we find Chrom on the 9th place on my list. Chrom is one of the more rash main characters in Fire Emblem. He's determined, confident, straightforward, and a bit reckless. He's one of those main characters that probably would have wanted to be a mercenary rather than a prince. He's a guy who values bonds and friendship above anything else, even his own well-being, which again leads to what makes me put him rather low on my list. Chrom is too trusting. He knows what will happen to him if they don't change anything. He gets warning from his daughter, but he still chooses to trust in his bonds completely. He's rather lucky that things didn't end with his death again, so similar to Erika, I find Chrom too naive. Unlike Erika though, nothing bad actually happened due to Chrom's naivete. Support conversations, he appears to be one of the more funnier main characters. He can joke and have fun. Many main characters are too serious all the time, so that's something I like about Chrom. In the support with Sully, we also learn that Chrom doesn't see women as weak people who need to be protected all the time. He views them more equally than many other main characters, which I like. In gameplay, Chrom is great. He's got good reclass option, and he can pass down the amazing ether, and it usually turns out pretty good. It's hard to get a bad Chrom, and it's not difficult to train him at all. He also has an infinite sword with him throughout the whole game, which gets an upgrade in the end, so you don't have to waste much money on him. Something that I don't like, but isn't really Chrom's fault, is how he has kind of disappeared into the avatar's shadow due to Smash. Now Chrom is that character that gets made fun of, which is a shame because Chrom was actually a pretty good character. He had his faults, but overall he was a cool guy. This next one is a little special. Leif first appeared in Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, but the game he's main character in is the game that followed, Fire Emblem Thracia 776. I'm going to judge him by both appearances, even though he's only a main character in Fire Emblem Thracia 776. I'm starting off with gameplay. In Fire Emblem 4, Leif is fantastic. He's easily one of your best units in the game. His only downfall here is that he doesn't have any major holy blood, and therefore no holy weapon. Leif is really useful even without it though, and much thanks to his promotion into Master Knight. A Master Knight is a mounted class that can use any weapon except for dark magic. Yes, that's right, any weapon. Sword, lances, axes, bows, wind, fire, thunder, light magic, and staves. He will also get really good stats in pretty much anything. Magic and resistance could be better, but it's still better than most physical-based units. The only negative about him in Fire Emblem 4 is that he doesn't have Pursuit when he arrives, and therefore not double often. This is easily solved by passing down a Pursuit ring to him, and it's definitely worth it. In his own game, Fire Emblem Thracia 776, he's not as great since he won't be promoted to Master Knight here. He can have trouble with some stats, but with a little help from the Crusader scrolls, he will easily max most stats, and considering that he's your main lord, it's worth giving him those scrolls for a while. He also has a personal distance weapon with a lot of uses that can heal him fully, and he's also the only character in the game immune to fatigue. So Leif is definitely useful. He does suffer from a late promotion though. In contrast to his cousin Selith, Leif is much more like a leader and much more independent, even though he's a year younger. Leif is a character that is kind and idealistic, but not naive. He's brave and grateful. He will do anything for people that he owes a debt, and do whatever it takes to save people that he calls family. Leif is probably the main character in Fire Emblem who had the hardest time while growing up, constantly hiding from both Granvale and Thracia, with often only Finn to protect him. This has made him strong and determined, and I also like that he's angry. Leif wants revenge for his family, and he wants to avenge them himself with his own hands. The biggest minus for Leif would be that he's a bit forgettable, being the main character of one of the least known and also one of the hardest Fire Emblem games. He's also a bit too reckless due to being so set on revenge, and sometimes he is a bit insecure about how he has no major blood. He doesn't see himself being as good as his cousin or Seb because he feels inferior, even though I think that he has better leadership qualities than Selith.